All right, David Coe, welcome.
Thank you, Scott. How are you, man?
I'm good. I'm good. The weather doesn't look great behind you. Is it raining right now?
It's raining. Yeah. Nice, cloudy, a rare cloudy, rainy day in Los Angeles.
Yeah. All right. Uh, for anyone who doesn't know David Coe, Coe stands for Close of Escrow, just so you know. And David is a longtime friend. He's also a part of my mastermind group and has a specialty down in South Bay. But it's not just South Bay. I mean, you do amazing work down there. Your work is just, seriously, it was great before. It just gets better and better and better, the product and everything you do. And then now you're doing small lot development basically all over Southern California. I mean, you're up in the Valley doing that now too, right?
Yeah, mostly city of LA, which does take me up into your neck of the woods in the Valley. Most of our
Hmm.
projects have been either in North Hollywood, Van Nuys, or Northeast LA. But that's
Hmm.
a distinct part of the LA code, this zero lot line subdivisions, which is what
Hmm.
I do specialize in.
Yeah, great, great, love it. And then you also run a group, or do you run, or is it you and someone else run a FIBI, for investors by investors, which I hear nothing but amazing things about. Can you take a minute to tell us about that?
Yeah, I do co-run it. So I am both a chapter leader. So I run a group in the South Bay, and then FIBI is a California not-for-profit, and I'm a part of that. I've got two partners that oversee the
Hmm.
brand for FIBI. FIBI we started 15 years ago. It's all about real estate investing. We are all about education. We're all about networking, and absolutely zero sales pitches are allowed.
Love
Which
it.
is a lot of the good things that you hear about FIBI are people that enjoy coming to our groups because they can actually get real information and meet real investors without someone trying to sell them a set of books or tapes or some kind of continuing education. We
Right.
just don't do that. We just we believe that the best education you can get in real estate investing is free. And because we don't sell anything, we tend to attract a higher quality investor, which gives people a better room to network with when they're looking to network with people.
Fantastic. I love it. Everyone I've heard that's ever gone has nothing but great things to say about that. So I think that's pretty amazing. I find it amazing that you're able to do as much as you do, to be honest with you, because to be able to run an organization like that, to be able to basically you run the Keller Williams office down in the South Bay. I mean, you're the. I mean, so tell us about your what you do in South Bay with the Keller Williams.
So Keller Williams Beach Cities, I'm the operating partner, which means I'm part of the ownership team, but I oversee a day to day, the operations of the market center. But really, Scott, my superpower is working through others.
Hmm.
I have a staff here. Even my team, co-real estate group, I've got a team here that I lead. The developments, I'm not in charge of day-to-day developments. I've got a
Hmm.
partner and we've got contractors on the ground. So I've gotten very good at, plugging into whatever I'm working on, helping people make good decisions, helping people
Hmm.
make decisions based on, where the market is headed and, following up and holding them accountable and making sure they do what they say they're
Right.
going to do.
Well, that's the thing. One of the things, if I was to give you a testimonial, which, from time to time I like to do, it would be you have great vision. I know you have a marketing background also, and your vision, I think, is great. And then the way that you put together the team, because I don't know how you do everything you do unless you are extremely organized. You really have a vision, and you are a great delegator. And I see what you do, and you do it all well. It's surprising to me that you can do that. I feel fortunate if I can, if I can, my little world here of residential real estate in the valley. I think that's where I ended. I'm not going to run a shop, and I'm not, and then do a small lot development, and then run a FIBI as well. So that's just nuts. So I'm very impressed by what you do. Anyone who would work with you is going to just be like really fortunate because you're very, very rare.
Well, thank you. I actually had we had an ALC meeting that we led today, and one of the other ALC members came and said, I just want to let you know that everyone on your team is so cool. Like, I just
Yeah.
like the people that work for you, and
Hmm.
part of our mission, vision, values is our number one value is save your drama for your mama, which we
Love it.
enforce, right?
Hmm.
Like we come to
Right.
make things better, right? Not makes things worse. And that's kind of my philosophy in real estate as well. We are the calm in the storm, not the storm. And
Oh, I like it.
Job in this industry. It's a crazy industry with a lot of big personalities and a lot of money and a lot of emotion on the line. And our job is to diffuse situations, not inflame situations. And I curate people around me that share that same mentality. And we think the best way you can get repeat business is to deliver a positive experience the first time around. Let those people tell the other people that they know about. And it's why you and I become such good friends. You kind of share that same philosophy, the way you work with your clients, which I've learned so much in watching you handle situations as well. I think that's what separates us from other people in this industry. Some people get caught up in their own personalities versus the needs of their clients. And I think both you and I build our personalities through succeeding for our clients versus succeeding for ourselves.
Gosh, I love that. When you say that, I sound pretty awesome, actually. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. We should do a podcast every day.
Yeah, we should. Gosh, every time I talk to you, I feel like we could just go on forever. So let's talk about the name of this podcast is Real Estate Hell with Scott and Nell, but it's not about the hell part. Things come up in real estate every day. I was at a caravan today, and the amount of stories that come out and all the things that you deal with. You saw some of the things that happened with me this past week with having to put something on the market like in one day that usually takes 3 or 4 because we were really meticulous about it. So it's about telling the victory and how you overcame it. So I'd love to hear one of the challenges that you faced. It could be in this past year or before, whatever you want, but what is one of the big things you faced with, let's say with a seller on a listing that just really, oh my God, you had to pivot and save the day. Tell us about that.
Well, I like to say there are distressed properties and there are distressed sellers, and it's crazy how those two things come together more often than not. And I'd say some of the most challenging real estate situations that I've had to address in the last year in my career are dealing with distressed sellers, right? And what does distress look like? I mean, clearly nothing I think is more stressful than divorce, which is something that, we specialize in and something that we're good at. But, we're getting ready to close an escrow next month on a project that I've had in escrow for 16 months. It's a conservatorship on a hoarder house in Torrance.
Okay.
And, besides the house being distressed, the family was distressed. When there's a conservator, someone has had to step in and make decisions on behalf of the owner. And not everyone in the family agreed with those decisions of the conservator, and it had to go to court multiple times.
Well, let's slow down for a second then. So what happens? Sure. I mean, why a conservator in the first place? Because a lot of people might not understand why you would bring someone in like that.
So when someone no longer has the capacity to make decisions for themselves, either the court or a trust will appoint a conservator to step in and make decisions for that. So in the world of trust and estates and conservatorships, when someone passes away, they get assigned a trustee. When someone is still alive but unable to make decisions on their own, there will be a conservator that will make decisions on them. The classic case is Britney Spears, right? Her dad was her conservator for years, and she finally won the right back to go back and make decisions about her estate on her own, for better or for worse. But our situation was something very similar to where the owner of the property, who had hoarded in that property for years, was no longer to take care of themselves, nor was the property in a condition to where someone could take care of themselves in that property. And the family had to make a decision to, remove the owner, put her someplace where she could get better care, and then, sell the asset to help pay for that care. So that's a very complex transaction. It was a development opportunity, which is why they thought of me because of my development background. And we actually have found someone who is a developer who wants to buy the property, but we didn't anticipate this being a 15, 16-month process, which, I have been in 3 different real estate transactions where there have been a conservator, and none of them have taken less than a year to actually,
Oh my gosh.
get it into to close escrow, which
Okay.
means, my role is to be a communicator, right, and constantly having to help people understand about the process. A lot of times means I have to research and understand what's happening,
Sure.
talking to the attorneys, understanding to make sure that I'm giving valid information, and then keeping everyone, motivated and enthused, in the project. And we are hopefully going to, we have a final confirmation date in January and can close soon thereafter. And as of today,
Right.
everything is still on schedule to close next month.
Great. Okay. And then, so let's talk about pieces of the team because there's so much to talk about here. We could talk about for hours. So you have a hoarding situation. So that's very specific. So first off, our first clip was about Britney Spears. That's great. Hashtag Britney Spears. That's nice. That's going to get a lot of hits. Thank you for that. And then, but what's the team with the hoarding? Are there people that specialize in it? How does that work?
Yeah, so we have someone in our world, actually she's in your world as well, that specializes.
Yeah. I was setting you up. I knew the answer.
Yes. Who specializes in situations like that, which she also specializes in estate sales. We have another referral for her. We're actually meeting tonight with a client that needs her services, not hoarding services, just estate sales. And part of the issue on this particular estate is if they would have just backed in a couple of dump trucks and just
it would have been easier.
It would have been easier, but the family felt like there was value in the stuff that was in the house, and some of it there was value there. Most of it was more, inherent value that the family felt that it had.
Right.
But even then, they needed someone to help them go through and sort it and make sure that, determine what was trash, what was salvageable, and what might have market value to it, and then actually help them execute a sale of those items, which she did wonderfully.
Okay.
So, we eventually got the house cleaned out.
So let's talk about that for a second, because now we talked about you bring in a team that specializes in dealing with estate sales, but specifically with dealing with the stuff and what's good, what's bad, what's junk. So when it comes to cleaning, was there something special that had to be done? Because in a hoarding situation, you find some pretty crazy things.
You know what? It wasn't as bad. Once we got all the stuff out, it wasn't as bad as we thought. Now we did have lice. We did have someone that needed to get a tetanus shot. There was it
wasn't that bad.
It wasn't that bad.
Tetanus shots. There was lice.
There was
mold.
There were some rodents. Just another day.
But nothing big.
Yeah. But based on what we thought we were going to see when we first saw the house, which really all we could see were the things that were in the house. We couldn't see the house itself. Once we cleared everything out, the house itself was actually in better condition than we thought it would be.
Oh, good.
It's still a teardown, and this particular house is on a double lot. So the new investor is going to go through, split the lot, and then build 2 brand new homes versus trying to save this existing home. So for that investor, actually, for 2023, it's probably been a blessing in disguise, where they've been able to kind of ride out a year where interest rates were really high. If they would have gotten possession of the property 15 months ago, maybe they'd have something ready to go right now. Maybe it'd probably be next year. But it looks like now they're probably not going to have anything ready to go until 2024, which might end up being a better time to sell those 2 brand new houses than 2023 would have been.
Great. So let's talk about some of the challenges, the real estate health side of this past year, with interest rates having gone up, making it so complicated for lending. Buyers don't know what to do. Sellers don't know what to do. So talk to us about what your experience was and what you've been doing to overcome that, so that you're prepared for 2024.
Yeah, I mean, because of my new construction, I was a bit of an anomaly in the real estate side, right? I actually had a client who had high interest rate on the properties that they own, and they had to sell it no matter what.
Right.
80% of all homeowners in California have a rate under 4%. So a lot of
Okay.
those sellers have just been sitting tight, right? As
Mhm.
rates went up, it's not that they loved their house. Some of them needed to move, but they didn't want to lose on their 3% interest rate.
Mhm.
So, decisions to downsize, decisions to upsize, decisions to, buy something in better condition and not live through a remodel just kind of got put on hold until rates started to correct, which I think they finally are now. My sellers were different. They had high interest rate construction loans. And if there's
Mhm.
one thing to learn about construction loans, the most expensive part of construction is time. The longer
Mhm.
it takes, the more expensive a project becomes, because over time, the amount of money that you have to pay increases exponentially as you draw down on your construction budget.
Right.
So my owners were not affected by interest rates, and we actually had inventory in a year where a lot of agents didn't. But we still had challenges. I'd say the first part of our year, we were able to navigate the high interest rate environment. We did have inventory, and
Well,
we were
let's talk. Let's be specific for a second. So you had to, when you say you got to navigate the high interest rate market. So tell us, because that's your hell. That's your challenge. And so, what did you do to navigate it and overcome it?
So I think part of it is delivering solutions through lending and finding the right
Mhm.
lending partners.
Right. Hmm.
There was a very obscure loan product that became very popular this year called,
Hmm.
the 2-1 and the 3-2-1 rate buy downs. And
Hmm.
what was happening, for people that don't understand that, if you do a full buy down of a rate, the way rates get bought down is a basis points based on the amount that you're buying a rate down to. So to buy a $1 million loan down from 6% to 4% is twice as much money to buy a $500,000 loan from 6% to 4%. Right.
Hmm.
So, and it becomes very, very expensive at that $1 million price point, which is where most of our business is in Los Angeles, is that, kind of that $1 million price point and higher. But what you can
But
do
talk
is
about that. You say the 3-2-1. You're talking about having to buy it down. But what's the benefit of that? How did you use the 3-2-1 buy down?
so that's a temporary rate buy down. So basically what that means is a 3-2-1 is in year one, you buy the
Hmm.
rate down 3%. Year two,
Hmm.
you buy the rate down 2%. And year one, the third year, you're back at a 1% rate buy down. And then by year
Hmm.
four, you're now at whatever that rate was. So what we've been able to do is use our sellers, either credits from the seller or having the buyer, like we had a couple of deals where a buyer wanted to do a 2-1 rate buy down, and the
Hmm.
seller didn't exactly want to pay for all of that. But what we were able to negotiate some kind of credit back from the seller, and then we would raise the price for whatever amount they needed for their rate
Right.
buy down, and then credit that back to them. So, and round numbers, maybe they needed $20,000 to do a 2-1 buy down. The seller was only willing to credit them $10,000, but we raised the price $10,000, credited that back to them, and then gave them the other $10,000 that the seller was willing to credit back to them.
You're
So
making
it
my
was
head
only.
spin.
What's that?
You're making my head spin.
Look, you didn't say no math, right? So when you said real estate hell, I figured math was an open topic.
So
Um,
what? So the benefit of of that buy down is that you're going to get your monthly is going to be less, so it's more affordable until hopefully rates do go down in the next 2 or 3 years. So you have this temporary buy down.
Yeah, exactly right. And actually, that money is held in an escrow account. So it's not like the rates bought down. It's the same payment, but the seller puts money in an escrow account that basically makes up the difference between what the rate payment would have been at the natural rate and what the buy down rate was. And
Right.
if the seller refinanced out early, then that money that was in that escrow account, the buyer actually received. So if, let's say there was $20,000, and then, in month 13, rates got down enough to where you could refinance and there was still $7,000 in that account. Well, the buyer could then use that $7,000 to help with their closing costs or whatever they needed to on the new rate buy down. So,
Damn.
I would say
Well
that this
put.
year rate buy downs became, it's something that's always been available, but nothing we needed when rates were at 3% and 4%.
Right.
And this year we've kind of had to go back through our lending partners and find loan products that help to bridge the gap between what a lot of buyers perceived as being historically high rates, even though they weren't. They were actually historically median rates. But in the recent history of most people's lives, these were really high rates, and helping them to bridge the mental gap of where they thought rates should be versus where rates actually were.
Awesome. Gosh, I love the way you articulate things. It makes it so clear. So have you ever had a transaction that was like, I mean, not salvageable? So there's someone you're in a deal with someone that it's just so complicated, and there's not a lot of reason to what's going on. They're not taking your opinion. Do you have an example of something like that? Obviously, you don't need to. I know it happened with Britney Spears, but do you have any situations yourself where that happened? And what do you do when you're presented with a situation that's pretty much unsalvageable?
So I did. I had a situation for a property in Huntington Harbor. It was a beautiful house, like a $4 million house. It had a boat dock in the front, and
Hmm.
it was a divorce situation. And the husband was the person who hired me, who was still in the house, and his ex-wife, or soon-to-be ex-wife, was no longer in the house. And the husband was making decisions and trying to have me help execute those decisions in a way to cheat his future ex-wife out of potential proceeds in the transaction. And
Hmm.
all along the way, there was just, these little moments in time where he kept making decisions that were going to come back and cost himself and, of course, me with potential legal liability,
Right.
as we continue to go through there. And at one point, it was like, look, we have to have a conversation here. Like, if we
Right.
continue to
Right.
operate this way, we're going to be in court, right? And his answer was, I don't care. I like being in court. Let them come and sue me.
Ooh.
I love
Ouch.
lawsuits. And that was one of those moments in my career where I was like, I don't love lawsuits. I've never been in a lawsuit real estate transaction. And in fact, in my listing presentation, Scott, I always tell, my sellers what my ask them what they think my number one job is. And of course,
Hmm.
most people think it's to get them as much money as possible. And I tell them that's actually my second job. My first job
Uh,
is to keep everyone out of court, right? Because it doesn't matter
hmm.
how much money you make if you end up giving it all the way back after you go through
Right.
litigation or arbitration or whatever it is. So in that particular instance, once I knew who the other party was and their mentality, we weren't a good fit. I'm not a
Right.
person who likes lawsuits. And even though I'd spent
Mhm.
a bunch of money on prepping the property, I actually paid for the staging,
Mhm.
and all the photography. The property had been on the market for about 60 days at that point in time. Of course, it was way overpriced because both parties felt like they needed to get more money out of the house than the house
Right.
was actually worth. I actually recused the listing, and I canceled the
Mhm.
listing, and recommended that he go find an agent that better fit his mentality.
Right.
Because what good is making a commission if you're going to end up not just in arbitration. This was legal liability. We probably would have ended
Right.
up in litigation between a divorce, let alone a bad real estate transaction. So I think it's one of the biggest things us agents have
Mhm.
to do. Again, sometimes the people we deal
Step
with can
out.
be as toxic as the properties we're dealing with. And when
Mhm.
you get a good sense of that, and that you're going to end up, creating a lot of heartache, and I'm definitely more of a win-win kind of agent. Now, it doesn't mean my client shouldn't get their fair share, but I don't feel like it should have to come at the expense of the other side. I think there's a way
Right.
to find a way for both sides. Even if my side might win a little bit more, that both sides should benefit in that transaction. And if there's a mentality of someone that just wants to win at all costs, and even if those costs means breaking the law, not disclosing things they're supposed to disclose,
Right.
not claiming income they're supposed to claim, then it's not worth whatever revenue I get in that transaction.
Right. So I found that from a standpoint of disclosures, because that's a big thing. If anyone ever says to me, should I disclose? They don't even need to finish the sentence because it's like, yes,
please.
Yes. Yeah. It's amazing to me that if you do disclose, well, you disclose while you're in love and everyone understands what's going on and they get a clear picture and nothing's being hidden. Otherwise, it definitely goes south because they'll find out something and then they're not they're not going to be as kind, as responsive. They're not going to be as flexible. And I mean, the truth is, it's our fiduciary duty to disclose everything we know of significance to the best of our knowledge. And I know you too. I know that it's not just about the lawsuits. It's about doing the right thing by people and telling the truth and being honest about what the situation is. And if someone asks you not to, you got to step out.
It's not just our fiduciary duty, Scott. It's our ethical and our legal responsibility to disclose everything we know. There's case law in California against agents who did not disclose something, not just that they didn't know, but disclosing things they should have known by doing a reasonable, visible inspection of the property. So,
right.
Disclosure is one of those crazy things. And I have a question for you. Has your clients ever disclosed something where someone said, "Oh my God, I'm not going to buy the house because of that"?
If it's disclosed ahead of time. Yeah, I mean, because to me, there was a deal that was done recently where they wanted to sell the property as is. And I said, why? Because if we do X, Y, Z, we can make more money. And in my experience, because I do this a lot, I've helped my clients prepare the house in a seller mini flip process and they make money. And they said, well, we're concerned about it because there's this mold there. And then there's water coming in through and the drainage is off. They went through this list. And I said, yeah, I know. We're going to disclose all of that, and then people are going to know ahead of time, but I still think we can, if we do X, Y, Z, we'll make more. They decided no, they would rather just sell the house. And I'm going like, I was just very surprised. And so I just, made it very clear that, look, I'm advising you not to sell it as is, but to, in this, but to do some fixes and, take it to the next level and make more money. But sometimes they don't want to.
I have never had a deal not go into escrow or fall apart because of something that a seller disclosed.
Right.
But I have had so many deals fall apart because of something the seller didn't disclose, and then it gets uncovered in an inspection, or someone runs an insurance report and realizes there's a massive insurance claim, and then all of a sudden the buyer no longer trusts the seller. Right? Well, if they didn't disclose this, what else they didn't disclose? And if they find one or two other things, which if a seller didn't disclose one thing, more than likely they didn't disclose four things. And by the time they find the third thing, they're out, right? So I've never had a deal fall apart based on something a client disclosed, but I have deals fall apart all the time based on things a client didn't disclose. So disclosure is a major issue. And in our industry, the two reasons why we get into lawsuits as agents is number one is lack of disclosure, and number two is dual agency, right? So those are two things that, I'm very clear with my clients about being very forthright in what they disclose. And then secondly, I don't ever represent a buyer of one of my listings. I'll have one of my agents do it, or another realtor in my office do it. But I've never represented both sides just because I don't want that excess liability.
Right. Yeah. Well, I couldn't agree more, because no matter, you could have the nicest, best people in the world, but when you're representing both sides, inevitably it's going to become a conflict, because it's just the nature of the deal, the nature of personalities. And so, so listen, first off, I'm loving talking to you. I know we're running short on time. I wanted to find out, is there any type of charity or foundation or anything that's really important to you that you'd like to share today that means something to you and your family?
Yeah, so I spent years serving as a director for the Redondo Beach Educational Foundation, which Redondo Beach is the community that I live in. And my kids started off in kindergarten in Redondo Beach schools and graduated from high school in Redondo Beach schools. And I feel like I've got these wonderful humans that are very well rounded because of that. And then as a realtor, nothing impacts a community more than the quality of the school. So I'm a huge believer in both schools and the education of children and the community that we create around that. So I still do events, even though I'm no longer a board of director for RBEF. I am still helping them raise money. I am still participating in different events. And, I tell anyone who's looking to get involved in a local community, how can I give back? I always point them back to the schools. And in particular, if your school has an educational foundation, it's different than a PTA. A PTA is all about the culture of one school versus an educational foundation is more like a kind of a PTA for an entire school district. But education foundations can actually pay for teachers and programs versus, PTAs can buy coffee and, do, fundraising, movie events and things like that, which are also important for a school. But I've been supporting RBEF and, we actually give back 3% of all of our commissions back to charity. So mine is dealing with schools and RBEF, but I've got an agent on my team that believes in mental health. I've got another agent on my team that believes in clean water. I've got another agent on my team that believes in rescuing animals. I've got another agent on my team who believes in helping young children establish a foothold here in the United States from other countries. So every agent has a cause, and then every time we close a transaction, we donate a portion of our combined commission back to that particular charity. And I think this year we're going to give away about $30,000, and our goal for next year, hopefully with better market conditions, is to donate $50,000 to charity.
And that's great. So I'm glad you shared that too, because I've always it's the business is really important to supporting our families and whatnot, but the ability to give back I think is huge. So is there anything else you want to share? Any other situations you want to, or are we good?
I think we're good. I think, that was kind of the thing that I talked about. I'm sure a lot of people here will talk about distressed property situations, but, I think dealing with distressed people is what's infinitely harder than dealing with distressed property. And that's kind of where, we seem to separate ourselves as understanding very complicated situations and how to help people navigate them and understanding when they're unnavigable and just getting out of the way.
Navigable? Yeah, I like that. That works. Hey, it works for me. Oh, I do have a favor to ask. You and I have worked together in the past. Is there anything that you can share about our experience together?
There's a lot of things I could share about our time together.
No, really just honest, true stuff.
Yeah, no, look, I think one of the things that I hear over and over about you is what a great connector you are with other people. You genuinely put other people's whenever you're in a situation with other people, you actually listen to them and you try to connect them with other people that may actually be of value to them. So you've certainly done that to me a few times and connected me with some great people, which is how you and I got connected. Someone
exactly
us years ago, and it ended up being a great connection. And then, you've always been someone willing to provide resources whenever I've needed them. But, I think probably the biggest thing, Scott, is your work as a realtor. You are a mini Steven Spielberg. You probably, you love the product. You treat it like it's set for your movie, right? Like, and you've got this vision and the storyboard that you see, and you want the scene to look right. You want the actors to perform right. And you want the staging to be right. And, you're probably persnickety and you're probably a pain in the ass to everyone around you.
Oh, yeah.
But your end product is phenomenal, and you've built a reputation on that, and it's well earned. Yeah,
I appreciate that. My dad always said to surround yourself with excellence. Surround yourself with people that are going to make you look better, and that's one of the keys. Because I can visualize something, but it's the team that executes it and exceeds my expectations. And when I find people I like, man, I just am very, very loyal to people who are good to me and understand what we're trying to do. And so, but thank you for that. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome, my friend.
All right. Hey, thanks for taking the time.
No, my pleasure. I was glad to do it again. And whenever you need me, let me know.
Yeah, we will.